Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Manello with YouLi, and today I'm presenting Taming Your Frankenstack. This presentation was originally delivered at the Educational Travel Consortium in February 2026. What you're seeing today is an abbreviated version designed to help you set the stage and give you a clear understanding of the core ideas. We're going to look at how to analyze your entire technology ecosystem, known as your tech stack, or as we like to call it, your Frankenstack. The goal here isn't just to talk about your tools, it's to step back and understand how all of the moving pieces of your business actually connect, overlap, and sometimes fight with each other. Because most organizers don't intentionally build a complicated system. It usually grows over time, one solution at a time, until suddenly you're managing a patchwork of platforms that barely talk to each other. That patchwork is what we call Frankenstack. Now, we all plan group travel, right? So I want you to take a moment and think about the tools you actually use to make that happen. Just pause for a second and mentally list all those. What are all of the moving parts required to make your trip successful? Think about everything that you touch along the way, the planning tools, the communication platforms, the payment systems. Most of us don't really realize how many systems we rely on until we stop and count them. And that realization is where Frankenstack conversation really begins. Now that you've had a moment to think about it, let's define what we actually mean by tools. And by tools, I mean everything required to build and run a successful trip. That includes presentation software and planning platforms, graphic designs like Canva or Photoshop, spreadsheets, itinerary builders, email systems, forms. Maybe you're using Google Suites or shared drives or paper checklists, CRMs, registration systems, payment platforms, and sometimes there's even that one person that holds the team together with critical knowledge entirely in their head and nowhere else. And all of that counts. Now think again about how many tools it actually takes to build a group tour, because it probably takes a lot more than you first imagined, right? Every one of those pieces makes up what we like to call your travel tech stack. Now, before I go any further, I want to make something really clear. This presentation is not meant to call anybody out. You're not behind, you're not disorganized, and you're definitely not bad at your job. What you're experiencing is actually very normal within the industry. Most travel organizers didn't sit down one day and designed a complicated system on purpose. Your tools evolved over time. You added solutions as new needs appeared, solved problems as they came up, and kept moving forward to serve your travelers. And that's not failure, that's adaptation. But now we arrive at the real question. What do we do about this growing collection of mismatched tools? How do we take something that evolved organically and make it work intentionally? And that's exactly what we're going to explore next. Here's what I want to promise you before the end of this brief presentation. First, we're going to help you clearly see the full inventory of the tools that already exist inside of your tech stack. Most people actually never mapped out everything in one place, and that alone can be eye-opening. Second, we're going to highlight some of the red flags that quietly create risk, confusion, and burnout within teams. These are the issues that often go unnoticed until something breaks or someone gets overwhelmed. Third, we'll identify a few of the highest impact fixes that you can make right away. Not theoretical ideas, but practical improvements. And finally, we'll give you a realistic 30-day action plan that you can follow after today. Now, it's important to say this up front. At this stage, we're not talking about buying new software or adding new tools to your stack. This isn't about piling on new technology. It's about understanding and improving what you already have. So we've already talked about tech stacks, but what exactly is a Frankenstack? A Frankenstack is a patchwork of systems that mostly works until you try to scale or a staff member leaves or a crisis hits. On the surface, everything seems fine, but underneath, it's held together by workarounds, manual steps, and institutional memory. And as you can see from our friend here, he's built from all kinds of different parts, different tools, different applications, different software platforms, all stitched together to create something functional, but not always stable. And honestly, he's probably a little angry because those pieces don't always work together as seamlessly as they should. A Frankenstack usually looks like disconnected spreadsheets, manual processes, duplicate data entry, and multiple apps to do overlapping jobs. It works just well enough to keep going until the strain starts to show. Most Frankenstacks weren't created intentionally. They were built out of necessity. As your business grew, you added new tools to solve a problem. One platform for registrations, another one for payments, something else for communications, or maybe a spreadsheet to fill in the gaps. Every decision made sense at the time, but over time, that collection of solutions can become the biggest source of chaos in your operation. It starts costing you time, money, and honestly, a bit of your sanity. And if this sounds familiar, I want you to know two things. You're not alone, and it is absolutely not too late to start making improvements. All right, before we talk about fixing tools or reducing tools or taming anything, we need to rewind for a moment. Because most of the pain that you're actually feeling has little to do with which tools you're using. It has much more to do with where your tools show up in the life of a program. Now, what you're looking at right now is a simplified version of the travel program lifecycle, not the brochure version, the operational version. We start with interest, then inquiry, registration, payments, forms and waivers, traveler communication, operation handoff, travel itself, and finally, post-travel. There's nothing on this slide that should be surprising. What is surprising is how rarely we actually see the entire process laid out in one place at the same time. Most programs don't actually manage a system. They just manage moments. Moments like when someone emails with a question, or when a payment fails, or when a medical form is missing, or a vendor asks for a roaming list, or when someone says, "Hey, where do we keep that?" We respond the way humans always do. We patch the moment. We add a form. We add a spreadsheet. We create a workaround. We add another tool. And none of those decisions are wrong on their own. Each one solves a real problem at the time. The real problem shows up in the handoffs. The handoffs are every place this flow changes hands, from interest to inquiry, from registrations to payments, from forms to operations. That's where the friction tends to start to show up. That's where data gets re-entered. Context gets lost. People end up filling out the same thing twice. And usually, one person winds up holding the whole thing together with experience, memory, and a lot of mental effort. So let's get practical for just a moment, and let me ask you this question. Where does your workflow break down? Now, I'm not here today to fix your tech in this presentation, and I'm not trying to standardize everybody to use the same system, and I'm definitely not here to rebuild your entire stack. What I am going to do is identify where your workflow actually breaks down and then look at which parts of your Frankenstack are under the most strain. That's it. Clarity first and then decision second. So let's actually review the parts of our monster. Each part of this monster represents a different process, application, or a piece of software inside your operation. As we go through this, I want you to mentally map or maybe even write down your own tools for each part of the body. So let's start with the brain. This is where your traveler profile data lives. Things like their name, their address, phone numbers, emergency contacts, email addresses, all the essential personal information. All of that information should live in one central place. So ask yourself, what software are you currently using to collect and store that information? Next, we move on to the eyes. The eyes give us visibility. This is where you get your overall view of the trip. Usually, this shows up as reporting. Questions like, how many packages have been sold? Or how many travelers are booked? What do the finances look like? What software are you using to actually see your business through reporting? Let's move on to the mouth. This represents communication. How are you communicating with your travelers and vendors? For many people, it's email. Others may use a dedicated communication platform. And here's an important question. If you need to go back and find a conversation with the traveler, how do you do that? Where does that history live? The arms and hands are data collection. They do the heavy lifting. All of your forms live here. Medical forms, allergy information, flight details, excursion selections. anything collected through a form. What tools are you currently using to gather all of that information? The stomach, the gut. This is where payments live. And we put payments here because this is where people tend to feel the pain the fastest. If payments slow down, it feels like a punch in the gut. It causes real stress across the organization. So, what software or tools are you using for payments and accounting? The legs are operations. These are the tools that keep everything moving forward every day. Do you have a standard operational system, or is it spread across multiple places? What tools actually keep your trips running? And finally, the feet. This is the vendor handoff, or kickoff. This is where information gets kicked over to suppliers, hotel guides, guests, and partners. Rooming lists, final numbers, operational details. What software are you using when it's time to pass information on to vendors? As you look at the whole monster, notice how many different systems might be holding these different body parts together. And that realization is the beginning of understanding your Frankenstack. So by now, you're probably realizing something. You likely have quite a few tools and applications that make up your Frankenstack. It might feel a little concerning to see just how many points in your workflow exist and where something could break down. And that reaction, that's completely normal. Because once you map out the whole system, you start to see the complexity that's been hiding in plain sight. I also want you to set an important expectation. There is no single perfect tool that will do absolutely everything that you need. That solution, frankly, doesn't exist. And honestly, chasing an all-in-one miracle platform usually creates more problems than it solves. What you should be looking at is a suite of tools that communicate well with each other, tools that share information, tools that reduce duplication, tools that move data smoothly from one stage of your program to the next. The goal isn't perfection, the goal is alignment and flow. YouLi is a strong example of one type of platform that can help you bring those pieces together, but we'll come back to that later. Now that you have a clearer picture of all of the tools that you use to run your group travel programs, I'm going to ask you a question. Where does your work overlap? Where are you entering the same information more than once? Are there places where data is duplicated across systems? Maybe you're copying traveler data from a form into a worksheet, or moving payment information into accounting software, or retyping the same details again into a vendor list. These moments may seem small on their own, but duplication is often where problems begin. And in a little while, we'll see how those small overlaps can quietly turn into real heartbreak. And as you're thinking about all of these tools, I want you to do one more thing. If you are writing down your systems right now, put a star next to the one that matters the most, the tool that would make you panic if it disappeared tomorrow. The one that, if it suddenly stopped working, would bring your operations to a complete halt. That reaction tells you something important. It shows where your business is most dependent and possibly where it's most vulnerable. And understanding that dependency is a step forward towards taming your Frankenstack. All right, let's talk about some common red flags. These are the moments where systems aren't failing dramatically, but they're starting to crack. On the left side, you see the things that many of us recognize: duplicate data entry, disconnected payments, forms that are living in emails, manual reporting, manual vendor handoffs. And none of these are bad decisions, but they're usually smart fixes that worked at the time. But the problems start when a tool gets pushed beyond the scale that it was designed for. So, you've probably seen the giant Google sheet that everyone keeps adding to. More tabs, more users, more formulas, until one day it slows down or crashes or nobody fully trusts what they're looking at anymore. That's not a team problem. That's a tool being used beyond its capacity. And when that happens, the results show up on the right: conflicting information, incorrect traveler records, lost details, and a lot of wasted time. These red flags are simply signals that your system haven't evolved at the same pace as your business, and recognizing them is the first step towards taming your Frankenstack. So up to now, we've been really good at diagnosing the problem. We've named your monster, we see where it hurts, and we've been honest about why it's exhausting. And now comes the part that everybody quietly worries about. What do I actually do about this? I want to be really clear about something before we go any further. This is not the point where we start shopping for new tools, not new platforms, not software, not shiny new systems. This is where we decide how we want our weeks to feel. Because if you skip this part, you're just going to rebuild the same stress inside of a different tool. So, what you're about to see next are not features, they're not software requirements, they're principles. And the reason that it matters is that you can apply these no matter what tools you already have. Old system, new system, Frankenstack held together with duct tape. These principles will travel with you. Principle number one source of truth. If you remember nothing else from today, remember this one. You need one place where the traveler data is correct. This is the difference between answering a question in 10 seconds and spending 15 minutes checking 3 different places to see which one is correct. Principle 2, capture once, reuse everywhere. Every time someone types in the same information twice, you pay for it. You pay for it in time, you pay for it in errors, and eventually, you pay for it in frustration. Principle 3, automate reminders. Most follow-ups don't need a human brain attached to them. They need a clock. Every reminder that you automate is one less thing that you're carrying in your head, and that mental load adds up faster than people realize. Principle 4, centralized communication. When communication lives in 5 different inboxes and 2 different chat threads, no one feels confident. People start double-checking and forwarding messages asking, "Did you see this?" And this is where the entire staff burnout shows up quietly, not in big explosions, just constant low-grade tension. And principle number 5, visibility. Visibility isn't about control, it's about not being surprised. Knowing when something is late or when something is missing, when somebody needs help. Surprises are expensive. They cost time, trust, and emotional energy. None of these principles is about working harder. Most of you are already doing that. This is about removing friction, little by little. And when you do, change doesn't happen all at once. It happens in ways that you can actually feel in your week. So let's come up with a 30-day plan. And I want to say this out loud because a lot of you need to hear this. You do not need a perfect system in 30 days. Just one thing needs to be better. So this isn't a transformational plan, it's a relief plan. 30 days is enough time to map one workflow, remove one duplicate step, and stop one recurring headache. It's enough time to feel less behind. And once one thing gets better, the next thing gets easier to see and easier to tackle. So let's talk about what our first win is going to look like. Week 1 is simple. You pick one workflow, not your entire program, not all of your trips, just one thing that's broken, just one. It could be registration. It might be payments or forms or communication. Pick the one that creates the most friction for you, the one that lives in the most places, the one that makes you sigh a little when you think about it. And here's the important part. The goal is not to fix it. The goal is to see it clearly from start to finish. Every handoff, every tool, every place where information gets copied, delayed, or lost. This isn't a transformational plan, it's a relief plan. So, which of those workflows are you going to choose? Week 2 is where you decide where the truth lives. One place where traveler data is actually correct. And I want to be really clear about what this does not mean. It doesn't mean that you move everything. It doesn't mean a big system overhaul. It doesn't mean a migration project. It simply means that you stop arguing with yourself about which version is real. When everyone on your team knows where the truth lives, something shifts. Decisions get faster. Questions get quieter. And suddenly, hours come back into your week. This is the moment where clarity starts to feel tangible. Week 3 is where people start to feel lighter. This is the week where you remove just one duplicate step, just one. If the same information is being typed in twice, you pick one place where it belongs and let the other one go. No debating with yourself. No just in case. No backup spreadsheet tucked away in a folder called final_final. This is where people feel immediate relief, because every duplicate step that you remove is one less place something can break, get lost, or create confusion. And once one thing disappears, you start noticing how much else doesn't actually need to be there either. And then we go on to week 4. This is the week where we stop trying to remember everything ourselves. Week 4 is about automating one reminder, just one. Medical forms, final payments, departure information, anything that's currently living in your head or on a sticky note or in a calendar that only one person on your team ever looks at. Every reminder that you automate is one less thing you're carrying around with you. It's one less follow-up to track. It's one less late-night email you forgot to send. It's one less thing that wakes you up at 2 a.m. because you're not sure if somebody submitted the form. And when your system starts remembering things for you, something shifts. You get your attention back. That's the difference between managing chaos and actually running a program. Now, some of you will take all of this information back, sit with your team, and work through it on your own. That's great. Others may decide that they want a second set of eyes on it. And that's not because anything that you do is wrong. It's just because you don't want to figure it out by yourself. And that's completely normal. Complex programs don't get clearer by accident. They get clearer when we slow down and focus on what actually matters. However you move forward from here, you now know where to start. As you start thinking about solutions, remember this. There is no perfect system where everything lives. The real goal is finding one place that carries the majority of the load. The platform that builds your itineraries, manages payments, creates sales pages, sends forms and reminders automatically, and keeps your traveler data organized in one reliable home. That's what YouLi was built to do. So if today felt a little too familiar, if you recognize parts of your own Frankenstack, the next step is simple. Book a demo. Come see what it looks like when your systems finally start working with you instead of against you. Thanks for listening.